Welcome to Truth Be Told. I'm Captain Ron with Tony Sweet, and we have a doozy, Tony. This gentleman that we have on today has been on another one of my Mount Rushmores. I'm knocking him off week by week here. I'm really excited to have this guest on. I heard him speak, and he really connected me on a very deep personal level. As a huge craps fan of playing the game craps in Vegas, he talks about it, and he just speaks to me. It's just really exciting. But that's just a fraction of what this gentleman talks about. He's a clinical psychologist. We're going to talk about telekinesis, psychokinesis, power of intention, synchronicity, serendipity, souls in the afterlife, meditation, just so many things. I need about a 12-hour show for this one, Tony. Let's get right to it. It's a great honor to have on Mr. Joe Gallenberger. Welcome, Joe.
Hello. Hi, how is everybody tonight?
We are terrific.
Good.
How you doing there, Tony?
I'm good. I'm excited to have Joe on.
Yeah, this is going to be great. Joe, why don't we start off right away and talk about like the focus of your work here with regards to utilizing, the power of intention to affect one's life, in general.
Okay. Yes, what most people would call manifestation. The things like The Secret talk about visualizing what you want. But what I found is there's often unconscious things in the way of that, and not much happens without the right energy. So I use the psychokinesis tasks like affecting dice and slot machines as a feedback system. And so we build energy through meditation. We focus our intent. And then we go down to the dice tables in Vegas as a group. We have tables reserved just for us. I've done, I think, coming up in the fall will be my 92nd Vegas Adventure Workshop over the last almost 20 years. So we got a lot of experience base there. And we go down, tables reserved, and try to do what our intent is, which is often to roll particular numbers and also to roll a long time. Since you're a dice player, a 15-minute roll is a pretty good one. I've personally had 2 hours, 30 minutes. We've had many people in our group do 90 minutes. We beat the statistics quite strongly in terms of the numbers that our intended numbers come up. So we often focus on 5 and 9 in pairs. And it's pretty easy to assess whether we're doing it or not, basically, because if you're not, you don't win. And,
Joe, you kind of went through that really fast there, 90-minute rolls. Do you know, for non-craps players,
Yeah, because I would
5 minutes is a good roll. I'm happy when somebody rolls 5 minutes at table. Rolling 90 is truly an exceptional roll.
They even at one of the casinos have what they call a platinum arm club, and you got to roll for 90 minutes to be a member. And we would have several people be in that club.
That is amazing.
Now, does that mean you're winning, or just somebody just has enough money to keep going?
No, you're winning.
Okay, because I'm not a craps person.
Right. As soon as you
the
lose.
wins in that game are exponential over time, at least the way we bet. We are doubling our bet every other time we win.
Oh, wow.
And so after the first time we hit the number, now we're playing with the casino's money, and then all the doubling occurs on them. So that's a nice way to play with small amounts of money and yet be able to have a good run.
That's amazing.
So what that means, for example, would be in movies, they always show you rolling a 7,
right,
and rooting for 7. Actually, in the dice game, 7's good at the beginning, but then is not any good.
Right.
So we forget 7s even exist. And for example, I just got back 2 weeks ago from a workshop. The woman rolled 45 numbers in a row with not hitting a 7.
Oh,
she
awesome.
should hit them once in every 6 times by chance.
Right. That's what the statistics say. Tony, I'm so blown away by Joe's comprehensive approach to playing craps. I can't even tell you. Much of what he says resonates with me in such a profound way because it's internally how I personally just coincidentally approach the game myself. But he's taken it to the extreme level. Things like you have to have a positive feeling when you're playing. You have to feel love and not fear. And you can't be greedy. Right, Joe?
Yes. So we do a whole day of meditation preparation. with special brainwave patterning tapes we'll talk about later, or exercises. We do a lot to raise a real strong loving energy. So when we go to the table, if you're grounded to the earth, feeling very much in the present moment, very happy to be there, connected with spirit as well, and feeling all is one and that we're a team, we get feedback by winning within seconds. If you go into greed, fear, ego, you get the feedback by losing, that you're not in the right mental state and energy state to do this.
Right. Joe, it's crazy how I'm actually sort of skeptical, as you know, Tony, of the spiritual things typically. Yet when I play this game of craps, for some reason, I do buy into all of that, and I, on my own, will project things onto people. For example, if I see an older guy that's maybe down on his luck, I'll be thinking to myself, boy, this guy could really use a win in his life. And I'll project that, even if I'm not betting on his numbers or with him or whatever. And then, sure enough, it feels like he hits, and it feels like I helped to cause that. When in fact, science and most people would say that the dice don't know. But it feels that way to me. You right, Joe?
Well, I'm going to stop you there on science. Psychokinesis, the ability to affect matter with your mind or with your energy, is now what we call in science a Six Sigma event. That the studies all taken as a whole indicate a confidence level of 1 in a billion by chance, where this would only occur. So with that, we can say that modern science, for things such as telepathy, remote viewing, psychokinesis, all of those are what we would call a Six Sigma event. They're very well proven. There are many scientists who do not believe it, that are in the traditional science model. But the folks in touch with quantum physics, the folks that have been doing the research at places like Ryan Institute, Princeton University, University of Virginia, all of those now, the data is quite clear that this does work. And the kind of things we were talking about, Tony, that positive attitude, positive expectation, getting involved with something greater than yourself, like when you wished good luck to that man, all of those things will increase the power of the PK.
Well, before we get any further, we have a special surprise because Ron's better half.
Okay.
We have Melissa that actually wants to ask you a question. Melissa, you there?
You're right, Tony. I am the better half.
Because they go to Vegas quite a bit
Thank you
together.
for being accurate with that.
Yeah, Joe, we're big fans of Vegas.
Her name is Elena.
Oh, there you go. Go ahead, Melissa.
I just wanted to, it's such an interesting phenomenon, and I've witnessed this certainly firsthand when Ron and I go and play craps, and I am just, I don't even question it when it's happening because it's so fantastic. One, because we're winning money, but two, I will call out a certain number, like on the come out roll, I'll say, come on, sweetie, roll a 7, or I'll say an 11, and he'll roll it. And then I'll say, do it one more time, and he'll roll it. And then, the third or fourth time, say it lands on a number. And then I'll say a 6, roll a 6. Or I've been specific and I don't know if there's any research that you've found with this, but I'll even say, roll a 4 and 2. And that upsets the hard ways bettors out there. But, I kind of see it, and I channel that energy to him, roll a 4 and 2. And he rolls a 4 and a 2, and it just blows my mind.
And sometimes she said it, and the table hears it, and they can't believe it. Right, Mel?
Yes. And we call that a hop bet in craps, where you call exactly what you're going to roll, like a 4 and a 2, and that can be very profitable. You're bringing up an interesting point. There seems to be this dance between intuition and the PK. So people will get an impression of what number would kind of like to roll next, if you will, and exactly how it might want to come, like a 4 and a 2. And then as they put energy to that, as they consent to that, that's very powerful to bring in that 4-2 right on the next roll.
It's incredible.
That's an interesting phenomenon. I didn't think about the telepathic aspect of it, but it makes sense.
But it's like we're in the zone, right, Mel? It's just like sometimes we're feeling it, and it just happens. And even like the other players, me and her are rolling or whatever, and then she'll call out, a tough number like a 10, and we'll pick them off 3 times because she calls it out, and they just stare at us like I can't believe that just happened.
Yeah.
Right, Mel?
It's true.
And it feels.
I wouldn't believe it if I haven't witnessed it more than once. It's almost every time that Ron rolls the dice, and we do this little, I call it just we play this game, and it lasts for quite a while, which is it just is amazing.
And I'm glad she said it instead of me. That's why we had her here to say this instead of me, because it feels so beyond chance, right, Melissa? Like there's, sure, everything's a fluke and it can happen once or whatever, but when we're doing it, it's happened multiple times, and it's happened multiple times in a row. You say 10, I throw a 10. You say 4, we throw a 4. You say 6, we throw a 6, and we win. That starts feeling like more than chance, right?
Yeah, it is more than chance.
So, and I'll look at Ron, and sometimes when it, like he's saying, it's a hard number, and I'll look at him like, whoa, like it really hits us like this is, and I'll say to him, this is crazy. Like, how is this happening? It's just,
and that's the question for Joe, babe.
Yeah. And that's really, frankly, the time most often I see the crew big smile and they shake their heads and just go, this is unreal.
Right.
When you call out 5 or 6 numbers in a row and you hit them. And the other one of the key words you mentioned was you guys have fun. And this has got to be fun when you make it into stress. Psychokinesis is a natural ability, but so is going to sleep, right? And yet if I said to you, I'll give you $20 million if you can fall asleep in the next 20 minutes on TV with 100 million people watching, you probably couldn't fall asleep, even though it's a natural thing. When you fall asleep, you go, gee, I'm tired. I'd like to go to sleep. And then you think about something else for a minute. And the same in psychokinesis activities, including dice. You set the intention for that 4, 2, 6, and then you let go. And you get it back into that playful energy, and then it tends to come. If you struggle too hard, then it probably won't happen. And so when I'm there and I roll 5 or 6 numbers that I called in a row, if there's somebody playing as another player and they get upset and they kind of begin to say, this is too weird, it's freaking me out, that could throw me off.
That's a
be
great
everybody,
point. Exactly.
Ideally saying that we're having a party. And they stay out of their heads and into their hearts.
There's no doubt, Joe, that if I'm feeling off my game or something hurts me or distracts me, I will 7 out. Now, again, some people would say that's just chance, but it doesn't feel that way. Joe, I am so jealous of the fact that you get this opportunity. I've said this to Melissa, that I fantasize of having 12 people at the craps table all being like me and her, where we're into the game and we know that we're focusing on the 10 and we want the 10. Because a lot of people are in Vegas. We see people, they're drunk or they're frat boys or they're screaming or yelling. And so you know what I do when I get on a table like that? I play the dark side, which means, Tony, I'm betting against the guy that's rolling the dice. Would you ever play the dark side under any circumstance?
No, I don't. I was in Vegas the week after 9/11. And that week would have been a good week to play the dark side, that the whole town was, as the whole country was, in a very negative space. But what we do instead, Tony, would be, we've learned some methods that, say you were up and something distracted you. We have 2 people either side of you like an energy arch, and they'll pick that up and you can say, I don't feel good at this moment, and get a hug from them. So if my wife is near me and I get this beautiful hug from her, and then I roll, great. But the next time I turn to you, if you're on the other side and hug you, then the table doesn't know what the heck I'm doing. But we reset that energy. We take a minute and we can probably convert more than half of those 7s back into a good number.
That's amazing.
We teach that because in life you want to learn how to reset bad energy rather than just quit,
Right. Here's another serendipitous thing. I was in Vegas on 9/11. You were there the weekend. I was there on 9/11. I was actually at Strasbourg Tower, and they shut down the whole thing because they thought they were going to hit into that tower. Yeah, I'm so jealous that you have. Give us an idea of what it's like having 10 people helping you to focus that energy, because it's so hard for me, because you go there and you have a table reserved for you with 10 people. I have to walk up
actually.
18. They're better yet.
Yep.
I have to walk up with a bunch of drunken partiers, and they're not focused, and they're not even paying attention, and they're spilling drinks, and me and her are all like 10, and we're all serious about it, and it's sometimes hard. Do you think that hurts our chances and hurts our thing? Tell us the difference between that and having the 18 people.
It's more challenging. If I don't have my group of 18 with the preparation, then I'd rather go to a table alone or with my wife or a couple simpatico friends. If I had to go to a table with strangers, I would spend some time genuinely trying to shift their energy into a positive place.
So you try to change them by reaching out to them and getting them to be positive and getting them.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And just as simple as where you're from and, those kind of things, and start joking around. And, we have a great time. The crews even, say, give me a hug. They're clapping for us. We sometimes do things to raise energy through sound. We used to go at the table. That didn't work too well. They kicked us out of that casino. So now we might sing happy birthday to Tony, even if it's not your birthday. Or we might go, yay, Tony. Things like that to just bring our energy back. We might put all our arms around each other on the table so that people are focused better rather than thinking about their money or counting their money, those kind of things. So there's a lot of energy tricks we use.
That's awesome.
And with the way you do it, it's a little tougher. But if you go to the table when you're feeling really good and your energy's up, your energy will probably carry the table.
What about the typical superstitions at a craps table? For example, as every craps player knows, there's things that happen. For example, if the dice go off the table, people think that the 7's coming next. And often, I swear, the 7 comes next. So how do you guys react to those sort of superstitions?
Only if that messes with people energetically. We reinterpret that and say, good, my unconscious threw that one away. It wasn't the right one for me. Right? Or we might say, okay, if you were the dice roller and you rolled them off the table, I might, if I was at the other end, yell, Tony, get a hug. And you turn to your wife, get a hug. And we have a program up at Monroe Institute that I developed called MC Squared, Manifestation Creation Squared. We roll dice in there and we aim for doubles. And we did a double should come up once every 6 times. We did some analysis where about 80% of the time after getting a hug, the person would roll a double.
Holy cow, that's dramatic.
Okay. So you can't go, just give me a hug so I get a double. It has to be a genuine hug with love transferred back and forth. And that settles the person down and gets them out of fear. And then the 7 goes away.
Unbelievable.
Much of the time.
I love how
it work, but much of the time.
You make everything. You just control everything by putting a different spin on that dice going off the table. Instead of looking at that negatively, you make it. Well, that's good. That was a bad one anyway, and we got it away. So it's all kind of a spiritual thing.
Yes.
Yeah. I think you've heard you say it's spiritual over mind.
Yeah. Well, most people think of PK is affecting matter with your mind. The mind to me is the steering wheel of a car. It sets the intent, okay? But the car goes nowhere without any gas. The gas is the best positive gas is the energy of a wide open heart, a place of deep compassion and love for everybody and the situation, the crew as well. There's no them against us. We are famous for tipping the crew as well. So they often will volunteer to stay over on their shift so they can be our crew.
Wow.
Because of the positive energies that we have there. So it's a very much an energy thing. And then we are very clear in our intent to get rid of fear and have clear intent of what we would like, long rolls, particular targets. that kind of thing.
That's incredible. Oh, I love the way you guys do all this prep before going to the table, that you meditate and you get in the right state of mind and you hug people around you and you get the positive energy going. That's incredible. Again, we don't do that. We just walk up and start playing.
Yeah. I do want to say right away that I do this mainly because I think it is so good a way to live life. Rather than picking up the negativity around you in a business group or in a family gathering or whatever, if care is taken to shift that energy to positive, I frankly think we can solve a lot of world problems that are difficult at that level even, let alone in a company or a family. If one is able to be genuinely in the heart and have good positive intention and positive focus. So when people go to this Vegas workshop, it's only 3 days, but it's a training for a more enlightened way of living, if you will. And I talked to a woman today who came back from that workshop 2 weeks ago, and her business, tripled. She had the best month she ever had when she got home. This energy is very relevant for energy healing, for living a good life, rather than just being at the craps table. But the craps table is a great feedback system.
Right, no doubt, it's very important. I want to make sure that we talk that this is really about life, not really about the craps table. That's just a microcosm look at it.
Yeah, so I don't want people to tune out thinking this is just a gaming show.
Right, it's not. That's exactly right. And it's very important that this is about healing as well. Like you said, that you guys can do this manifestation of somebody has different physical ailments that as a group.
We've had people wake up the second day of the workshop pain-free from post-polio syndrome for the first time in 20 years.
That's great.
Things like that really delights my heart.
Joe, can I ask you? This is Tony, by the way. Can I ask you a quick question? I'm hearing this because, like I said, I'm not a big craps. I'm more slot machine. So I'm sure you could probably use the same thing with slots.
You're more bingo, but anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for toys. But when you're dealing with spirit. A lot of people may get confused with religion, but spirit, why does spirit really care about you winning at craps?
Awesome.
I mean, because a lot of times you think of craps and you thinking about ego, or you thinking about monetary stuff, or even just things instead of like the spirit of the body. So can you kind of go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so again, I interview everybody on the phone before even inviting them to the workshop.
Right.
I'm not interested in people that are trying to make their mortgage or greedy or whatever it might be, an ego thing driving their attendance.
Right.
Then I think from the psychokinesis literature, from the science labs, what we're finding is it's important to connect with something bigger than yourself. So at the table, we would roll for us rather than me or you or them. That connection with spirit seems to work. I think sometimes individual spirits who may have passed on, that are our ancestors, if you will, actually do come in and help. So people may think of their grandmother that they beloved and smell her cookies as they're rolling and feel her presence and feel like she's helping. Other people, it's more broad, the idea of God or spirit or source, that they're just connecting with the huge loving intelligence that is life. And I think why it might want to help us is I think life is pro-joy, pro-abundance, those kind of things. But you're right, if you approach it through ego, it's almost like a big shroud comes over the table or the slot machine. And I would comment, slot machines, I'm a video poker player, are very amenable, and you can also verify, because I may have a goal of, say, a royal flush in hearts. I know by chance that's 160,000 to 1.
Ooh.
If I hit it in the second pull, I know that's very unlikely by chance.
That's unbelievable.
And, doing that over and over and over the years for winning at video poker where the casino odds should take effect eventually is also very confirming. But when I'm at a slot machine, I'm thinking of my brother who passed, two brothers, actually, my mom and dad, who are on the other side. And I'm kind of in a love relationship with them, and feeling a real strong connection and indicating my appreciation for them having been in my life. And then once in a while, my intention flicks to the machine. I say, oh, now it'd be nice to have 4 of a kind, and boom, 4 of a kind.
Wow.
But I think it's a broad general, my own higher self, spirit in general, and sometimes a little help from your friends up there that have passed on.
I swear I believe that. And Joe, another thing is you point out a good thing, which is that not only you have to be in this loving space and you have to be connected, like you're saying, and you kind of get in your own little zone when you're in that space. And you point out a good thing that I always have felt as well. You can't do this. You can't be greedy. You can't go after your mortgage. And you said something once that I thought just hit exactly how I feel also. You can't go there with a little money to make a lot of money. You're better off there going with a lot of money to make a little money. So you're better off bringing $500 with you to Vegas and trying to win $600, which is 9 out of 10 times what happens with me.
Right. Where
most people go there with 100 and they want to make 10,000. Right, Joe?
Yeah, it's there's a general rule in gambling: the person with most money wins, and the casino has more money.
Right.
And so you go with $20 trying to make 200, you might be up and down 20, 40, and all that before you ever got to 200, and so you'll be tapped out. If you went with 200 to make 20, you'd have an easier time. So we use that kind of money management, if you will. The money is interesting because it causes people to pay attention. I'm pretty dynamic when I do workshops. We do metal bending, lighting bulbs with our own energy, grow seeds in our hands, sometimes with root growth 1.5 inches in 2 or 3 minutes. And these psychokinesis tasks, including the gaming, really makes people pay attention. So the money is a good attention provider, feedback device. But if it's the object itself, then that can be difficult. That said, if somebody went with $100 to the dice table and says, I want to make $1,000 for the American Cancer Society, they often are successful.
Wow.
Because they're not doing it from the place of ego.
Joe, I want to ask you this about money. I'm glad you brought up money because this is one thing I haven't heard you address. And for me, a big part of it is the money. I have to get in the mindset that this is fun money that's gone already, that I'm just using it while I'm playing this game. If I ever feel like, oh, God, I really don't want to lose this, it's my last 100, I need it, then I will lose for sure. Do you guys address that?
Yes. So we look at it, the money is just the sand in the sandbox that we're playing with. I went through a period of my life at one point where I had 3 girls, my daughters, who looked like they were all going to get married, and they were all kind of doing college tuitions. And I went with the unconscious thought of, I don't want to lose. And I broke even for 2 years in several trips until I realized, my unconscious thinking is more, I don't want to lose than I want to win. And so it's there's a lot of layers to this, and you want to be in a really genuine place of, I feel abundant. This is my play money. I will do good things with it for myself and the people I love, and maybe even strangers. We put a blessing bucket in the corner of the room when we started doing these workshops, totally voluntary, totally anonymous. At this point, we've raised over $150,000 for charity.
Holy crap!
Where people just put some money in there when they have a winning session or what have you. And that kind of attitude, then money becomes your friend. If you hold it too tight, it's not going to happen.
I have to say, I have a family member that has a gambling problem, and I believe for the last probably 25 years. But I believe because her intention is to go when, I'll spend $500 when I don't even have $500 so I could pay things off, so I can do that. I think, and I agree with you, the intention, because you're stressful. You're stressed to the night. You're like, if I could only win, I believe that. But if
Joe, tell him that's the wrong way to go about things, right?
Yeah, lack breeds lack. One of my biggest sayings is, fear is expensive, love is priceless, choose wisely. because
that's a good one.
when you're in fear, those things happen. But what happens for most people going to Vegas, they're on vacation. They're saying, gee, I'm going to Vegas on vacation. I can afford to lose $20 a day or $200 a day, whatever their budget is. And that's exactly what they manifest. We look at that money as seeds, like a farmer would plant crops. And so you put a handful of corn in, you expect a big crop. And so our attitudes about money is very different than I can go out there and afford to lose X, Y, or Z, or I have to have it because my mortgage is due.
Right.
That is so great. And I think that's such a big part of this. And I would argue that very few people go with this approach.
I agree.
Well, what's funny is
that's fine. If you're going out to have fun and you want to blow $50 a day at the tables, they'll take it. They don't mind.
And if not, I'll take it. Right. I'll sit on the dark side and take your money. That's fine.
Right. And I have to say it was funny. I went home about a year and a half ago for Christmas. Every time we go home, my sister to Kansas, my sister and dad and I drive down to Oklahoma and go to this bingo parlor, and they have casino. They also have a regular casino there too. So I won at bingo $300. I went and played like $30 at the slot. I won $600, and then came back and won bingo again.
Great.
But what was funny is like then when you go to a casino and you're like, oh God, I hope I win money, because it was just for fun. And I also split it with my mom, or my dad, and my sister.
Aha! There it is.
And their deal is if you win, you split it with the people. And I'm like, that's fine with me. So I still walked out with a nice profit, and my dad and sister, they had fun with that too. So, but then you go and you don't win for months because you're like, oh my God, if I could just.
Joe, we have Huell Hauser here too. This guy is so genuine and nice. I mean, he lives in that space that we're talking about. So he's a deserving guy.
It does. I look at this as potentially a very positive, lifelong yoga to live from that place of generosity to your family in that situation. It's a good way to go.
Yeah.
And like you said, with business meetings and in relationships, it's good to utilize it outside the casino. Clearly, that's really what it's for.
The casino has the advantage of giving you very quick feedback. In seconds, you'll know whether you're in that zone. At home, if you think negatively for 3 weeks, it might be 3 weeks before you got a cold or something bad happened. If you think positively, I want my soulmate, it might take 6 months. And you might get discouraged or lose track of whether you're accomplishing your goal. In the casino, you'll know in minutes. And that's very helpful to train people.
Joe, when you're playing craps yourself and you roll, I don't know if you ever play sports, but I remember when you play baseball, the second you hit a home run, as the ball hits the bat, you know it's a home run. You don't have to follow through. You just know because you hit it so perfectly. Sometimes when I'm rolling the dice, I swear to God, as soon as they leave my hand, I know it's a 5 and I'm good. I won. I'm already like high-fiving, and then the guy calls out the 5, and I knew it was a 5. Do you feel that way?
Yes, in fact, the way we would look at this when the dice are in motion rolling, there's quantum uncertainty. The reality of what's going to be there has not been determined yet. At that point, if everybody shifts and looks at the dice, they've changed from whole brain and heart to left brain. What is it? And that tends to have a negative outcome. So we will have people not even look at the dice land. We'll want them to, quote, follow through that beautiful energy and let the crew call what it is. But many people, when they're in the zone, and it has a lot to do with the same zone as sports, time slows down.
Right.
You lose track of the guy smoking the cigar, whatever might be distracting. And just like a zone in sports, when you hit that with the bat and you hear that crack, it's a home run. You'll know whether the dice are going to come down on your target. Quite often.
And that's what I was getting at. You feel the zone, right? You feel like, okay, I'm in one of these spaces where I could roll 30 numbers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so bizarre to say that. And do you feel that way at slot machines as well?
Yeah. I love slot machines.
Yeah, me too.
At least the video poker ones.
Now here's the thing that we could talk about scientifically. Joe, don't you say that like a slot machine basically runs on a random number generator, and don't we have those in the world where we've seen those be affected by the collective unconscious, like 9/11 or something?
So there's something called the Global Consciousness Project, and they have random number generators around the world, which means they're picking either 1 or 0 1,000 times a second, much like a head-tail coin flip. Should be 50-50. When Obama's acceptance speech at his inauguration, 9/11, tsunamis, Super Bowl time, all of those random number generators go into order instead of staying random when about 1 billion people think of the same thing. The random number data on that is a 7 sigma event, meaning 1 trillion to 1 by chance, with the information that they've gotten from the random number generator experiments around the world. So yeah, it seems like human consciousness orders randomness. Sometimes on other shows where they have call-ins, somebody will call in and say, my life has been crap from the day I was born. Everything bad has happened to me my whole life. And I'm compassionate with that, but then I say, congratulations, you're already affecting reality. Now all we have to do is take away the fear, and you could affect reality in a more positive way.
So those are good people for you to mold.
Some good, some bad.
Right.
And this person is, creating the negative so much. And to be fair, it's usually unconscious, and it's usually come by honest. May have had abusive parents or who knows what, but it can be turned around. So some of my other meditation CDs, my home study course, Sync Creation, are designed to really deal with that dark side, turn things from negative to positive for people at a deep level. And I really like that happening. It goes into a little bit, the last book I wrote was after my brother's suicide in Vegas, called Heaven is for Healing. And he was a super good man. He was intelligent, honest, hardworking, and he couldn't get it together. So that happened 20 years ago, and my mission became, if it's not sufficient just to be a good man, what else do you need, man or woman? And I felt like you have to be deserving of goodness and blessings coming to you, and you have to positively expect them. So most of my tools have been designed to help people who may not have had it going along so well, flip that around and begin to have a life that's filled with a lot more synchronicity, serendipity, wins, if you will. And that's real satisfying to do.
Yeah, Joe, you were touching on things I wanted to get to there. What do you think this is? Do you think it is we're tapping into some mass collective unconsciousness, or is it us individually? What do you think is causing these manifestations?
We are social beings, and so, for example, the energy in society right now is pretty negative and fearful in the United States, with politics and such being divisive. It's harder to generate the energy individually and as a group than it was 10 years ago for that reason. That said, you can learn how to get most of your energy directly from God's source, if you will, however you define that, beauty of nature, and decouple from that society's energy. But very powerful is when groups get together, as we talked about at the dice table, and form a whole group that has a positive energy. And so our young people have that potential now to, think about the future more positively than we might at this point. And that's very contagious. So it's a combination of individual energetics and free will and being able to manifest, as well as, if all your friends around you are very supportive of you and say, you can do it, you are, really terrific at this, you'll be great. That's going to bolster your energy, and more likely you'll accomplish what you wanted. If everybody around you is, oh, that's risky, don't try that, you'll get hurt, and maybe even jealous of you, then that's going to put brakes on your energy until you learn how to really manage your own energy, almost like I talk about getting a black belt in karate, kind of a karate master of your own energy. And that's possible without, 20 years in an ashram. With the kind of technologies we have now, you can make great progress within months. But we do get affected by the public, and we have a lot of effect on the public. Does that help answer, Captain?
It absolutely does. Okay, my next question then for you is, how does meditation help you with this? Like, I know, talk about the hemi-sync and how meditation, see, I've never done anything like that. How does that help you prepare for example, perhaps?
Bob Monroe, who founded the Monroe Institute, was a successful businessman back in the 30s and 40s, and he started to have out-of-body experiences. And he wanted to have many, many people be able to do that so he could study it. So he looked at sound and started even with some of the sounds like the train makes as he commuted from Connecticut to New York. The type of sound seemed to put people in an altered state. And so he has those kind of sounds, as well as putting one tone in one ear, one in the other, maybe 100 cycle, 104, and the brain will go into the difference, which is 4 cycles in that example. And that's associated with delta waves, which is deep sleep or deep relaxation. So we can, using hemi-sync or binaural beat, other technologies like that, for somebody who's never meditated at all, within 5-10 minutes, get them to be very relaxed. That gets them out of ego, gets them out of left brain, begins to use the whole brain. And then we can vary the brainwave patterns to an expanded state of consciousness where you are feeling more one with the universe, where you're feeling more connected to the earth, where you're feeling more creative, all kinds of different states. And that's the beauty of those things. You can do it up in Monroe. I've been a trainer there 26 years. We have atheists and Buddhists and Catholics and Republicans and Democrats come through. And it can benefit anybody without having to believe any dogma. And so it's a very powerful way to get to these altered states that we talk about as being important.
Does that make
sense?
Does that jumpstart them, Joe? Is that the idea? So you could kind of, do you do this before you play craps? Do you kind of get in the zone by sort of meditating pre-hand?
Yeah, so we would send a preparation manual to people at home about 6 weeks before the workshop. They'd begin to do some of the energy exercises we recommend. Then when we get there as a group, we lay down on pillows and blankets and beds and use headphones, and we listen together, mostly to the ones that I've developed. And besides the binaural beat things I'm mentioning, we'll also play music that tends to open the heart. You Light Up My Life, The Wind Under My Wings, whatever kind of schmaltzy music that a person might find very beautiful and heart-opening. And then from that point, that's when we go down to the tables. After we've gotten to know each other, gotten comfortable with each other in the game, talked about betting, money management, how we do that energy support at the table. Then the second day we go down, we meditate again, listening on headphones before we go down. Usually within a half hour before we go down, we've been on meditation.
Wow. So you got to get in that headspace first before you even hit the casino.
And it's almost to turn the head off and to get into the heart space.
Well put. Thank you.
The headspace is a one that's conducive to the heart being open. Like you playing with your wife there at the table, you like each other, you kind of feel like Bonnie and Clyde there, having lots of fun. And so you support each other well. And as mentioned, Tony saying, I'm playing for my family. All 3 of us are going to split the winnings. All those things would move you out of head into heart.
Yeah, that's great. Tony, let's get into your area now. Joe, if we could shift off of this for a second,
sure.
as this finds out. Why don't you talk a little bit how you feel? Last week we had Richard Martini in here, and he spoke about the afterlife and the souls.
Yeah.
I want to find out, what is your belief in an afterlife and how that ties into this? Can you speak a little bit how you feel like after death, what happens?
I think all death leads to light, even if it's by suicide. My experience with my brother's death and many other situations with suicide is the person is met with great compassion. There is a triage of healing that's different depending on whether you died of old age naturally, if you took your own life with 2 weeks to live with terminal cancer pain versus you were a 16-year-old who acted on a day and impulsively committed suicide. There's a lot of variety of what you might need over there, but all of it has has in common very deep compassion. So an example of somebody very bitter and murder-suicide, for example, they may be put into almost a coma-like state for years as spirit works with them unconsciously to download and offload some of the negativity out of their thinking and their personality. Someone else might pop over there, like my dad died at 90, and he said, oh, it was as easy as stepping one room to another. Death agrees with me. I should have done this a long time ago. He was kind of a joker. And what it seems like over there is a lot more access to spirit and learning and insight. And yet there's some special things about being in an incarnation here. So folks usually will decide eventually to come back here. Best I can tell, there is an option for simulated lives over there, almost like lucid dreams, because when you do a full incarnation here, you pick up all your quote problems and stuff are in your DNA and your family lineage. Over there, you can have more of a dreamlike life and deal with some issues without losing so much connection with spirit. And that can occur in Earth time in almost an instant, even though your experience there might be that you were born, got married, and did these things and died. So there's lots of options, but it's a very compassionate universe from my point of view.
And you definitely think there's
Evidence for Healing goes into a lot of that.
And there's definitely an afterlife, though. You're convinced.
Yeah. Right? That's a knowing for me.
It's a knowing.
I've had so much confirmation for myself from people that loved ones who have passed and come get back with messages and things that were verifiable, that kind of thing. That for me, that's a known.
That's amazing. That's been coming up with us,
meditations. We travel to the other side, if you will, and it'd be very hard for thousands of people to make up the same dang story.
Right.
Much like the near-death experience literature, there's a lot in common between different people's experience by and large.
We keep hearing it. It's amazing. I had one more question for you about the, I've heard recently there's this intelligence centering in our abdomen, almost like we have a second brain, like our gut instinct. What are your thoughts on that?
I'd agree. I'd say that's our third brain.
Third brain? Wow.
Stuff coming out of the Institute of Heart Math is showing that in the heart, there is more energy electrically. When you say you were going to be shown an unpleasant picture versus a pleasant, your heart reacts, the intelligence there, before your mind even knows it. And now they're talking about this third brain in the gut. And it makes sense to me that that's there as well.
Yeah, we've talked many times with other people around about this, and it is the synchronicity of how this subject is coming up a lot. So I feel that some of our people on the other side must be, sending us a message through people like yourself, because it's funny how it is coming up very.
The veils are thinning. 20 years ago, in meditation programs at Monroe with pretty much the same technology, it took X amount of effort to get in touch with the other side, if you will. Now that effort is probably 20% of what it used to be for many people.
Tony brought up my favorite subject on here, which is synchronicity. I wanted to ask you how that ties into all of this. But let me first, I was going to tell you this off the air, but I'll tell you real quick. When I went to the Magic Festival with Tony in May, and I was sitting at the pool waiting for the next thing with Joshua P. Warren, and was talking to Melissa, and I've got my phone loaded with coast-to-coast shows for 10 years. And we were just sitting there, and I said to her, being in Vegas reminds me of this guy. I can't think of his name, but he wrote this book about manifestating these things and about Vegas and playing craps. And boy, if I could just think of him, I would love to get him on the show. And we sat down at the pool, and I swear on my mother's life, I put my headphones on, I hit next, and it was Joe Gallenberger on my phone. Now, that is synchronicity personified. And then I wrote you an email, and now here we are. So how does those sort of synchronicities tie into all of this that you're talking about?
What we find is when you raise energy this very high, that the amount of synchronicities that happen in your life tend to increase exponentially. So there may be 5 or 6 of them a day, or it used to be 1 or 2 a year. And they'll put you in touch with the right person at the right time. You'll be in the right place at the right time. I have a CD called Liquid Lockets of Meditation to get into that state of high synchronicity. And so even the words there will be something like, you'll be in just the right energy at just the right time to take just the right action. And that'll tend to increase these synchronicities, which I think are real neat ways of the universe saying, I love you, and playing with you, if you will, that you're not alone, that you're supported.
So you experience that in your life?
Sure.
Because Tony and I have synchronicity all the time. It's the one thing on this show that we talk about that I can verifiably say that happens to me for real.
Oh, it's constant, because we say, oh, if we could meet so and so, and then seriously the next weekend or instantly somebody walks around the corner and we're like, oh my God, that was crazy. We were just talking about that person.
Yeah. So when we're doing the workshops, people might walk through saying, gee, I wonder how Sam is doing. And immediately he's in the elevator with him.
Isn't that just amazing? And you just attribute that to the universe feeling love towards you. Do you feel like that's the other side communicating with us, or do you?
I think, broadly used, that might be your own higher self as much as anything. But Carl Jung, was a big synchronicity guy. He and Einstein had a talk where most of physics is dealt with cause and effect. They both agreed, Einstein and Carl Jung, if I'm not misquoting, saying they also thought things were caused by meaning. And when you enter this world of synchronicity, you get into that meaningful creating.
So do you follow those things when they happen in your life? Do you feel like that's a sign sending you in the right direction?
They're really good to, and they can be just confirming signs. For me is finding a feather is a yes.
Yeah.
And we've done things like I've turned to my wife in Vegas walking through the casino and said, you think this will be a good session? And there'll be a feather on the ground right in front of us inside a casino.
What?
Things like that.
Joe, what do you think about, because people that go through, and not necessarily you're a negative thinker or a negative person, but how when negative things happen, or you feel like it's a negative thing that's happening, but yet good things are constantly going along with it. And then you start seeing a lot of angel numbers.
Yeah.
Do you know, are you...
444 and 1111.
Like for myself, in the last 3 months, every time I look at a clock or a license plate or a house number, apartment number, it's 222. Even my debit card, it's like 222 or 333. And I was like, what is going on? Because somebody brought the attention about angel numbers. Once they brought it to my attention, now I started seeing it over, and it keeps increasing. But there's also, like I said, there's that side of your life that's like, wait a minute, this is not good, but I'm not necessarily feeling bad about it. But then there's also all this other great stuff that's happening at the same time. Yeah. What do you contribute?
It can be a mix because they want you out of a job you're doing or a marriage or whatever. And so there's negatives there and there's positives in the direction you want to go. But, basically we could get this down to simple, like if your fear is 80% and your desire is 20, you're going to manifest negative.
Right.
As you get 50-50, you'll have a mix. As you move to 80% positive, good desire, and only 10% fear, that's when the synchronicities and serendipities and energies and stuff all come in your way much more quickly. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be 100% without fear. But you got to get it down there on the low side and have a lot of excitement, like a kid before Christmas or Hanukkah.
Right.
That wide open hope as a kid is a very powerful energy, and most adults have been hurt enough they don't like to get into that. But if you can be vulnerable enough to have that kind of wide open hope and have your energy in your heart, miracles are going to happen for you.
That's awesome.
Joe gave this profound answer. I thought he was going to say, go play roulette number 22. But it wasn't as simple as I was thinking. All right.
That's great. And I think anybody could take that to heart. And because I always, the older I get, not that I'm getting more jaded or angry about it, but I'm like, there must be a reason I'm going through whatever I go through. And I'm sure a lot of people, that's, if you could look at it that way, what's the reason?
Sure.
Why is it to build me something for something greater?
And, just assume that it's for a sacred reason. When we talked about energy healing and these illnesses going away, sometimes they don't. That can be to teach you a lesson, to teach people around you a lesson. My wife has been engaged in a health issue for the last year or two. It looks like what she's trying to do also is clear some negative patterns in her ancestors going back many generations.
Oh, okay.
And so, when things aren't going your way, as you would define with your conscious mind, often there's some sacred purpose going on, from my point of view. So you raise your energy best you can. If you get stuck, and then you go into meditation, you ask what's up, and they usually will tell you. You're moving in the wrong direction, or you're impatient, or we want you to hang out a while where others take care of you. We don't want you to be working so hard. We need you to take a time off. If you don't do it voluntarily, we're going to break your leg or give you a cold or whatever it is.
Interesting.
But
I'll tell you,
usually we get in trouble when we're pushing with our ego.
I could go for another 6 or 7 hours with Joe. I really would, but Tony's letting me know that we are actually out of time, unfortunately. So I'd like to, basically the answer here is to get into that headspace of love, and it's a really interesting, powerful thing. Joe, why don't you tell people where they can reach you, where they can get a hold of these books? Tell us whatever you can about.
So Inner Vegas and Liquid Luck and Evidence for Healing, all 3 books are on Amazon. But you can also go to my website, which is Sync, SYNC, Creation, CREATION.com. It's there on the screen, I think. And there you'll see all kinds of things about the Vegas Adventure Workshop. There's free articles and tips about how to manifest or use energy healing. And there's a lot of products as low as less than $20 to get a CD to start listening and see if it would change your energy. Liquid Luck is probably one of the biggest places people start with that. And it's a good place to start. We had so many great things happen when that CD came out. I wrote a book with the stories in it and a little more detail why it's so effective. So that's a great place to start for, a $20 bill.
Joe has the perfect meditation voice. He talks really slow. He's got the perfect voice.
Mm-hmm.
When you listen to Liquid Luck, it is immediately like you're just like.
So I go into and now relax.
Yeah, right.
And now relax.
You can just take your own time just for you.
Right.
That's
perfect.
Awesome.
Joe, I that's fantastic, right, Tony?
That was great. I loved it. We really
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it. Well,
It was a pleasure being on your show.
Of course, and we'll have you back, I'm sure, soon. And everybody, please go to his website, synchcreations.com. And you can go to our website, truth be told, worldwide.com, and go follow us on YouTube, and that's just Truth Be Told Radio, and iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all those wonderful places. But until next time, we thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here on Truth Be Told.
Sounds